The howling winds of Christos swept across the barren ice fields, carrying crystalline particles that glinted like diamonds in the pale blue light of the twin moons. Captain Marcus Vance squinted through the visor of his thermal helmet, surveying the aftermath of what military reports would later call a successful neutralization of hostile forces. What lay before him was what any honest soldier would simply call slaughter. The Christosian outpost, a magnificent structure of ice and some unknown crystalline material that seemed to pulse with an inner light, now lay in ruins. Bodies of the snow leopard-like natives were scattered across the permafrost, their white-silver fur stained crimson. Their tribal markings, intricate patterns shaved into their fur, were now unrecognizable under layers of frost and blood. Marcus had led many such operations during the 5-year resource war between the Terran Empire and the Christosian Alliance. Each time, he felt a piece of himself freeze and break away, much like the ice shards that now crunched beneath his heavy combat boots as he moved through the battlefield, checking for survivors as protocol demanded. "Outpost secure, Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Eva Rostova through his comm unit. "All hostiles neutralized. Extraction in 20. "Copy that," Marcus replied mechanically, his breath fogging his visor. Completing final sweep. The war for Christos had begun as most colonial conflicts did, with resource surveys, diplomatic misunderstandings, and finally, the inevitable military solution. The Christosians, with their tribal society built around ice spirit worship and remarkable cold resistance, were defending their sacred lands. The Terrans, with their superior technology and insatiable need for the rare crystals that powered their interstellar fleet, called it securing strategic assets. Marcus had stopped questioning the morality of it all years ago. Or, at least, he told himself he had. A movement caught his eye, a slight disturbance in the snow near the remains of what must have been the outpost's central chamber. His plasma rifle instantly came up, muscle memory taking over before conscious thought. Through his targeting system, he saw her, a female Christosian warrior, wounded but alive, attempting to crawl behind a fallen ice column. Her fur was a striking white-silver with distinctive black spots, rarer than the typical solid white or gray of most Christosians he'd encountered. Her eyes, when they locked with his through his visor, were a piercing ice blue that seemed to glow with an inner fire despite her weakened state. "Command, I have one survivor," Marcus reported, his rifle trained steadily on the wounded alien. "Female. Ice Wolf tribe, based on markings." There was a pause before Commander Thorne's gravelly voice responded. "Eliminate the hostile, Captain. No prisoners from that outpost. Those are your orders." Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle. The Christosian female watched him, her chest heaving with labored breaths, a deep gash across her torso seeping blue-tinged blood onto the ice. There was no fear in her eyes, only a fierce, defiant pride that seemed incompatible with her desperate situation. "Acknowledged," Marcus said, his finger moving to the trigger. The Christosian's ears flattened against her head, but she did not cower or attempt to flee. Instead, to Marcus's utter shock, she pushed herself to her knees, wincing from her wound, and looked directly into his eyes. A gesture of submission from a race known for fighting to the death. "Don't kill me, human," she said in heavily accented but understandable standard, her voice a melodious growl that seemed to resonate in the frozen air. "I'll warm your bed." Marcus nearly dropped his weapon in surprise. Not just at hearing a Christosian speak standard, that was rare but not unheard of, but at the bizarre offer. He had heard of their strange honor codes and ritual surrenders, but this was something else entirely. "What did you say?" he asked, his rifle still aimed but his finger easing off the trigger. The Christosian's expression was complex, pride and defiance mixed with grim determination. This was not the simple plea of the defeated. There was something cultural at play that Marcus didn't understand. "Your people will kill mine regardless," she said, her breath creating small clouds of condensation. "I offer service by ancient right. My life for yours. My warmth for your protection." She placed a clawed hand over her chest wound. "I am Lyra of the Ice Wolves. The last, it seems." Marcus stood frozen, not from the sub-zero temperatures his suit protected him from, but from the weight of the decision before him. Orders were clear. Yet something in her eyes, not submission but a challenging gaze, made his finger refuse to pull the trigger. "Captain Vance, confirm elimination of hostile," came Thorne's impatient voice through his comm. In that moment, Marcus made a decision that would alter the course of two civilizations. Negative, Commander. Hostile is wounded but conscious. Potential intelligence asset. Bringing prisoner for interrogation. Captain, your orders were clear. With respect, sir, Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. This one speaks standard and has indicated willingness to cooperate. Tactical value outweighs field elimination protocols. A tense silence followed before Thorne responded, his voice cold with barely contained anger. On your head be it, Captain. Extraction team arriving in 5. Thorne out. Marcus lowered his weapon and approached the kneeling Christosian cautiously. Can you walk? He asked, aware that what he was doing could be considered insubordination. Lyra's eyes narrowed, studying him with obvious suspicion. Yes, she said finally, struggling to her feet with a dignity that impressed him despite her injuries. Why? She asked as he secured restraints around her wrists, loose enough not to aggravate her injuries, but tight enough to satisfy protocol. Marcus wasn't sure if she was asking why he was taking her prisoner or why he hadn't killed her. He wasn't sure he knew the answer to either question. Let's just say I'm curious about what an Ice Wolf warrior thinks she can offer a Terran captain, he replied, guiding her toward the extraction point, wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his military career, or perhaps the first truly moral decision in years. The interrogation room in the Terran base was designed to intimidate, with its stark metal walls and single chair bolted to the floor. For Christosians, used to the vast, open spaces of their icy world, such confinement was particularly distressing. Yet Lyra sat ramrod straight, her wounded body bandaged, but her spirit unbowed. The medical staff had treated her injuries with the same efficiency they would show a Terran soldier. No more, no less. A small mercy Marcus had arranged. Let's try again, Marcus said, pacing slowly around the chair where Lyra sat. They were alone, another protocol violation he'd insisted on. What was your outpost defending? Lyra's gaze followed him, her pupils contracting to slits in the harsh, artificial light. 3 days of questioning had yielded nothing but stony silence or cryptic responses. We defend what is ours, she replied, the same answer she'd given to every variation of his question. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped dark hair. You know that's not going to satisfy Commander Thorne. He's already questioning my decision to keep you alive. Something flickered in Lyra's expression, not fear, but calculation. Your alpha grows impatient. Why does he hunt so desperately in Ice Wolf territory? What does he seek that makes him kill cubs and elders alike? It was more than she'd said in all previous sessions combined, and it caught Marcus off guard. Cubs? There were no reports of civilians at that outpost. Lyra's lip curled, revealing sharp canines. Your reports lie. Marcus felt a familiar unease settle in his stomach, the same disquiet that had been growing with each mission. He'd requested intelligence reports, blueprints, target assessments before the raid. What he'd received had been suspiciously vague. Tell me about your people, he said, changing tactics. About the Ice Wolves. About the offer you made me on the battlefield. Lyra tilted her head, studying him with newfound interest. You spared me without understanding my pledge? Humans are stranger than I thought. I'm trying to understand now. For a long moment, Lyra remained silent, then seemed to come to a decision. The Ice Wolves were guardians of the Northern Territories. When faced with certain death, our warriors may invoke the Frost Bond, a sacred oath binding our fate to one who has proven worthy through combat. It is not surrender. Her eyes flashed with sudden intensity. It is a sacred contract, life for life, warmth for protection, service. Her voice lowered, in all ways required. Marcus felt heat rise to his face as the implication became clear. You mean? Yes, Lyra interrupted, a hint of dark amusement in her voice. Your kind would call it a bed-warming slave, though that misses the spiritual dimension. It binds our souls. The protected becomes protector. The conquered becomes essential. She leaned forward slightly. I did not expect you to accept without claiming. Perhaps humans do not understand the value of such bonds. Marcus cleared his throat, unsettled by both the cultural revelation and his own reaction to it. Terrans don't take slaves, bed-warming or otherwise, he said stiffly, though the history of his own species made that statement questionable at best. Yet you cage me here, Lyra observed, rattling her restraints gently. That's different. You're a prisoner of war. Is it? Lyra's gaze was penetrating. Tell me, Captain, what is the difference between a prisoner and a slave, except the honesty of acknowledging ownership? Before Marcus could formulate a response, the door slid open, and Commander Thorn entered. Tall and imposing with a shock of white hair that contrasted with his perpetually tanned skin, Thorn had the look of a man who had clawed his way to power and enjoyed every brutal moment of the climb. Captain Vance, he said, his cold eyes flicking dismissively over Lyra. A word outside. In the corridor, Thorn didn't bother to hide his displeasure. 4 days, Captain. For days. And you've extracted nothing of value from that animal. Marcus stiffened. Sir, with respect, we're dealing with complex cultural differences that require. Spare me your xenophile sensitivity. Thorn cut him off. I need results. The Christosian resistance is intensifying, and our intelligence suggests they're mobilizing around something big. That outpost was a key location. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Get what we need from her, Captain. Use whatever means necessary. If she made you some kind of offer on the battlefield, perhaps it's time to take her up on it. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Sir, that would violate multiple protocols regarding treatment of prisoners. Don't play naive, Vance. We both know what happens in war. Thorn's smile didn't reach his eyes. You have 48 hours to extract actionable intelligence, or I'll assign someone who can. Am I clear? Crystal, sir. After Thorn departed, Marcus returned to the interrogation room, his mind racing. Lyra watched him with those unervingly perceptive eyes. Your alpha wishes my death, she stated rather than asked. He wants information, Marcus replied, not bothering to deny the obvious. And he's not my alpha. Lyra's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Isn't he? You follow his hunt. Kill at his command. Marcus found himself unable to argue the point. Instead, he made another decision that protocol would definitely not approve. I'm transferring you to more suitable quarters. If you're going to talk to me, it shouldn't be in a metal box. Lyra's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Why would you do this? Consider it a gesture of good faith, Marcus said, releasing her restraints and replacing them with lighter wrist cuffs. And an acknowledgement that your culture deserves more respect than we've shown it. As he led her through the corridors of the base, drawing stares from passing personnel, Marcus felt as though he was crossing a threshold he couldn't return from. He wasn't sure if he was being manipulated or following his conscience, but either way, something had to change. The quarters he brought her to were basic, but a significant improvement. A small officer's room with actual furnishings, a proper bed, temperature controls, and a separate bathroom. Most importantly, it had a window overlooking the vast Christosian landscape, the endless fields of snow and ice glowing with an ethereal blue light under the twin moons. Lyra moved immediately to the window, placing a clawed hand against the transparent material, her expression momentarily unguarded, a glimpse of homesickness that humanized her more than any words could have. I've arranged for meals more suitable to your physiology, Marcus said, standing awkwardly by the door. And the temperature can be lowered to something more comfortable for you. Lyra turned to him, her head tilted in that calculating manner again. You seek information through comfort rather than pain. Clever, for a human. I seek understanding, Marcus corrected. If that leads to information, so be it. Understanding, Lyra repeated, as if tasting the word. A rare commodity in war. She moved away from the window, approaching him with a fluid grace that belied her recent injuries. I will tell you this, Captain. The ice wolves guarded something far more valuable than the crystals your kind kills for. Something ancient and powerful. And your commander, Thorn, knows it. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? But Lyra had said enough for one day. She turned back to the window, her posture making it clear the conversation was over. As Marcus left to report this small but significant progress, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn into something far more complex than a simple colonial resource war. Something that would test not just his loyalty to the Terran Empire, but his very understanding of right and wrong. Lieutenant Eva Rostova was waiting for him in his office, her normally impassive face showing signs of agitation. A communications and intelligence specialist, Rostova had served with Marcus for 3 years, and he trusted her analytical mind implicitly. "Captain," she said, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk." Marcus diesel verheert zu sieht. "What's on your mind, Lieutenant?" Rostova glanced at the door, then lowered her voice. "I've been analyzing the communication patterns from High Command regarding operations on Christos, particularly the last 6 months of directives from Commander Thorn." And Marcus prompted, recognizing the look of someone who had discovered something they wished they hadn't. "There are inconsistencies," she said carefully. "Transmissions that don't follow protocol routing. Resources being diverted without proper documentation. And there's more." She placed a data pad on his desk, sliding it toward him. "I've been monitoring unusual Christosian activity on the northern perimeter. They're using tactics we've never seen before, more sophisticated technology, coordinated strikes." Marcus reviewed the data, his unease growing. "These don't match known Christosian capabilities." "Exactly," Rostova agreed. "Whatever we're facing, it's not the typical tribal resistance. And there's something else." She hesitated. "The outpost we hit 3 days ago? I managed to recover partial data from their communications array. There was a message sent just before our attack, using an old Terran encryption protocol. From inside the outpost." Marcus stared at her. "You're suggesting Terran communication with the Christosians? That's treason." Rostova finished for him. "Yes. And guess whose personal encryption key was embedded in the protocol?" Marcus didn't need to guess. "Thorn." Rostova nodded grimly. "I haven't been able to decode the full message, but what I have doesn't make sense. References to something called Frost Heart, and coordinates for a location deep in Ice Wolf territory." The pieces were beginning to align in Marcus's mind. The prisoner mentioned something, said the Ice Wolves were guarding something valuable. Something Thorn knows about. "Captain," Rostova said carefully, "if Thorn is running a private operation outside of Imperial sanction, it would explain his insistence on eliminating all survivors at the outpost." Marcus finished. "No witnesses." A heavy silence fell between them, the implications sinking in. If Commander Thorn was engaged in unauthorized activities, possibly collaborating with a Christosian faction, it changed everything about their mission. About the war itself. "We need to know what the Ice Wolves were protecting," Marcus said finally. "And we need proof of Thorn's activities before we make any accusations." "The prisoner," Rostova suggested. "If she knows about this Frostheart." Marcus nodded. "I'll talk to her again. Meanwhile, keep digging, but carefully. If Thorn suspects we're onto him." The warning didn't need to be completed. They both knew what happened to those who crossed Commander Thorn. Over the next few days, a tentative trust began to form between Marcus and Lyra. He spent hours in her quarters, learning about Christosian culture, their tribal structure, their deep spiritual connection to the frozen world they called home, their ancient traditions preserved despite technological advancement. In return, he shared honest accounts of Terran history, the complexities of the Empire, and even his own journey from idealistic young officer to the war-weary captain he had become. Lyra proved to be not just a fierce warrior, but a scholar of her people's history and a keen observer of Terran behavior. She had learned Standard by listening to captured communications equipment, her natural linguistic abilities surprising even herself. "Your kind speaks much, but says little," she observed one evening as they shared a meal, a strange but companionable routine they had fallen into. Marcus had arranged for traditional Christosian fare, while he ate standard military rations. We have that in common with the Christosians, then, Marcus replied with a slight smile. You still haven't told me what the ice wolves were guarding. Lyra's expression grew serious. Some secrets are not mine to share easily, Captain, even to one who has shown unexpected kindness. Is it this frost heart I've heard mentioned? Marcus asked, watching her reaction carefully. Her ears flattened against her head, a sign of surprise or alarm he had learned to recognize. Where did you hear that name? It doesn't matter, Marcus said. What matters is that Commander Thorn seems very interested in it. Interested enough to potentially work with Christosians outside of official channels. Lyra set down her food, her eyes narrowing to slits. The exiles, she hissed, the word carrying such venom that Marcus instinctively tensed. You've seen them? Christosians with scarred fur, technology grafted to their bodies, fighting alongside humans. Marcus shook his head. Not personally, but we've had reports of unusual Christosian activity. Different tactics, advanced weapons. Lyra stood abruptly, pacing the small room with agitated energy. The exiles are outcasts, banished for using forbidden technologies, for violating the sacred harmony between our people and Christos itself. They seek the Frost Heart to exploit its power, not to protect it as my tribe was sworn to do. And what exactly is this Frost Heart? Marcus pressed. Lyra stopped her pacing, fixing him with an intense stare. It is not a what, Captain. It is a who. An ancient consciousness, a spirit of Christos itself, dormant for generations in the sacred ice caves of my ancestors' territory. Legend says it holds the power to control the planet's climate, to freeze or thaw continents at will. Her voice lowered. But more than that, it is said to contain knowledge of technologies beyond even your empire's understanding. The secrets of crystal manipulation that could power 1,000 fleets or destroy them with equal ease. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's lower temperature. And you believe Commander Thorn is working with these exiles to find it? It would explain much, Lyra said grimly. The targeted destruction of Ice Wolf outposts, the specific patterns of attack. They are eliminating those who know the location, who understand the rituals needed to communicate with the Frost Heart. Her eyes met his, suddenly vulnerable. I may be the last who remembers the way. Before Marcus could respond, an alarm blared through the base. His comm unit activated automatically. Captain Vance to Command Center immediately. Base perimeter breach in sectors 7 through 9. Unknown hostiles. Marcus was already moving toward the door when Lyra called after him. Captain, if it is the exiles, your weapons will not be enough. They use corrupted crystal technology that could disrupt your energy shields. He paused, looking back at her. Why tell me this? Why help us? Lyra's expression was fierce. I did not help us, human. I help you. You spared my life. And if the exiles take the base, they will find me and what I know. That cannot happen. Marcus made another split-second decision. Come with me. Her eyes widened. You would arm your prisoner? I'm trusting my ally, he corrected, releasing her restraints completely. And right now, I need all the allies I can get. The command center was in chaos when they arrived. Tactical displays showed multiple breaches, with strange energy signatures unlike anything in Terran databases. Lieutenant Rostova was coordinating defense teams, her usual calm efficiency strained but holding. Captain, she acknowledged, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of Lyra unrestrained at his side. To her credit, she adapted immediately. Unknown hostiles using advanced energy weapons and some kind of localized EMP technology. Our outer defenses are down, and we're losing communication with perimeter teams. The exiles, Lyra confirmed, studying the tactical displays with practiced ease. These attack patterns, they're hunting, not just attacking. They're after something specific. Or someone, Marcus said, looking pointedly at her. A new voice joined the conversation. How perceptive, Captain Vance. Commander Thorn strode into the command center, flanked by 4 security officers whose hands rested too casually on their sidearms. His cold gaze fixed on Lyra with something like hunger. I see you've decided to fully embrace fraternization with the enemy, he said, his voice dangerously soft. bringing a prisoner to the command center during an attack. That's treason, Captain. Is it, sir? Marcus didn't back down. Or is treason making deals with Christosian outcasts? Targeting specific tribal outposts for your own agenda? Seeking this frost heart for personal gain? Thorn's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. Security, arrest Captain Vance and Lieutenant Rostova for insubordination and conspiracy with enemy forces. The Christosian is to be transferred to my personal custody immediately. The security officers moved forward, but hesitated when several of the command staff, including Rostova, drew their weapons. Sir, one of the officers said uncertainly, we have multiple breaches. Shouldn't we focus on defending the base? The breaches are precisely why we need to secure command from compromised officers, Thorn snapped. Do as you're ordered. As tension in the room reached breaking point, the base rocked with a massive explosion. Lights flickered, and several consoles went dark. Direct hit on the main power relay, someone shouted. Switching to auxiliary. In the momentary confusion, Marcus made his move. Rostova, with me, he ordered, grabbing Lyra's arm and pulling her toward the secondary exit. All loyal personnel, defend the base. Commander Thorn is compromised and possibly working with the attackers. Chaos erupted as officers were forced to choose sides in an instant. Most, faced with an active attack and conflicting orders, defaulted to defending their position rather than pursuing their fleeing captain. Thorn's outraged shouts followed them down the corridor as Marcus, Lyra, and Rostova ran for the vehicle bay. We need to get off base, Marcus explained as they ran. Get to the frost. Heart before Thorn and the exiles do. You believe me then? Lyra asked, keeping pace easily despite her recent injuries. I believe something valuable enough to corrupt a Terran commander and turn Christosian against Christosian is worth finding first, Marcus replied. Rostova, what's our best option? The lieutenant was already accessing a terminal in the vehicle bay. Snow crawlers in Bay 3. I'm overriding the security locks now. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they lock down the entire base. As they worked to secure their escape, alarms continued to blare, and the sounds of fighting grew closer. Whoever was attacking the base was making significant progress against Terran defenses. There, Rostova announced as the door to Bay 3 slid open, revealing 3 snow crawlers, rugged, tank-like vehicles designed for Christos' harsh terrain. I've downloaded all the intel I could gather on my secure pad. If we survive, we'll have proof of Thorn's activities to send to Imperial Command. If, Marcus echoed grimly as they boarded the nearest crawler. Lyra, I need coordinates. Where would the exiles go to find the Frost Heart? Lyra settled into the navigator's seat, her clawed fingers moving confidently over the unfamiliar controls. The sacred caves lie 3 days' journey to the north, beyond the Crystal Ridge. But there are paths known only to the ice wolves that can get us there in 2. Then that's our advantage, Marcus said, initiating the crawler's startup sequence. Let's use it. As the bay doors opened to the howling Christosian night, none of them harbored any illusions about the danger they faced, pursued by both Thorn's loyal forces and the mysterious exiles, racing toward an ancient power that could reshape the fate of an entire world. Their unlikely alliance, forged in the chaos of betrayal and common purpose, was about to be tested in ways none of them could imagine. The snow crawler plowed through Christos' harsh landscape, its reinforced treads gripping the ice as they followed Lyra's directions through narrow ravines and across vast snowfields. Inside the vehicle's heated cabin, Marcus and Rostova took turns piloting while Lyra navigated, pointing out hidden paths and dangerous terrain features invisible to Terran sensors. The exiles will take the known routes, Lyra explained as they skirted a seemingly impassable glacier wall. They have forgotten the old ways, the paths that only those who listen to the ice can find. And Thorn? Rostova asked, her eyes constantly checking the rear scanners for pursuit. If he is as clever as you say, he will follow the exiles, Lyra replied. But neither knows what truly awaits at the sacred caves. As they traveled, Lyra revealed more about the Frost Heart, an ancient consciousness believed to be a living embodiment of Christos itself. According to ice wolf legends, it had gone dormant centuries ago after a cataclysmic event had nearly destroyed the planet. The ice wolves had been entrusted as its guardians, protecting the sacred caves where it slumbered and maintaining the rituals that kept it peaceful in its sleep. If awakened properly by one with pure intent, the Frostheart could restore balance to Christos, perhaps even heal the damage done by your mining operations, Lyra explained. But if forced awake, controlled through technology as the exiles intend, it would react with the fury of the planet itself. And the crystals? Marcus asked. How do they connect to this? They are its tears, Lyra said simply. Fragments of its consciousness, crystallized over millennia. That is why they hold such power and why your empire covets them so desperately. The implications were staggering, that the very resource they had been fighting over was potentially part of a sentient planetary consciousness. It challenged everything Marcus had been told about their mission on Christos. On the second day of their journey, as they navigated a treacherous mountain pass, their scanner detected aerial pursuit. Terran shuttles, Rostova confirmed grimly. 3 of them on an intercept course. Can we outrun them? Marcus asked. Not in this terrain, Rostova replied. And if they have Thorn's clearance codes, they can override our controls remotely. Lyra leaned forward, studying the topography on the scanner. There, she pointed to a narrow ravine ahead. The Crystal Valley. The mineral formations there will disrupt their tracking systems, and there are caves where we can hide the crawler. Marcus made the turn, guiding their vehicle into the ravine as the shuttles closed in. The valley was breathtaking. Massive crystal formations jutted from the ice like enormous transparent sculptures, refracting light in dazzling patterns. The beauty was overshadowed by their desperation as they navigated the increasingly narrow passage. There, Lyra pointed to a dark opening in the cliff face, barely large enough for their vehicle. That cave connects to an underground network that will take us halfway to the sacred caves. Marcus maneuvered the crawler into the cramped opening just as the shuttles passed overhead, their searchlights sweeping the valley. Inside the cave, they powered down to minimal systems, holding their breath as the lights passed over the entrance. They'll send ground teams next, Rostova said quietly. We should keep moving while we have the advantage. The underground journey was harrowing, navigating by the crawler's lights through twisting ice tunnels barely wide enough for their vehicle, with Lyra guiding them based on ancient tribal knowledge and what seemed like an intuitive sense of direction. Several times they were forced to abandon the crawler to clear path obstructions or navigate sections too narrow for the vehicle. During one such stop, as they worked together to move a fallen ice column, Marcus found himself working side by side with Lyra, their breath forming matching clouds in the frigid air. You risk much for a cause not your own, she observed, her strength easily matching his as they pushed the massive ice chunk aside. Maybe it should have been my cause all along, Marcus replied, surprising himself with his candor. This word never felt right. Now I know why. Lyra studied him, her ice-blue eyes reflecting the crawler's lights. Among my people, changing one's path when truth is revealed is not seen as weakness, but as wisdom. Among mine, it's often called treason, Marcus said with a grim smile. And yet here you are. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Rostova cleared her throat from the crawler's open hatch. Path is clear ahead, according to scanners. We should move. By the end of the second day, they emerged from the underground network into a vast open plain of pristine snow, unmarked by any signs of civilization. In the distance, illuminated by the ethereal light of Christos' twin moons, rose a mountain range unlike any Marcus had seen before, each peak a perfect crystalline formation, glittering like massive diamonds against the night sky. The Crystal Sentinels, Lyra said reverently. The sacred caves lie at their heart. We will need to proceed on foot from here. The snowfields are too unstable for the crawler's weight. They gathered essential supplies, including cold weather gear for the humans, weapons, and emergency rations. As they prepared for the final leg of their journey, Rostova managed to establish a secure communication channel to a trusted contact at Imperial Command. "I've transmitted all our evidence against Thorn," she reported. "Whether anyone acts on it is another matter, but at least the information is out there." The trek across the snowfield was arduous, with Marcus and Rostova struggling to keep pace with Lyra's naturally adapted movement across the snow. The temperature dropped precipitously as they approached the mountains, reaching levels that would be lethal within minutes without their specialized gear. "How much farther?" Marcus asked through chattering teeth as they paused in the lee of a massive ice formation. "The entrance lies just beyond that ridge," Lyra pointed. "But we are not alone." Following her gaze, they spotted movement near the base of the central peak, dark figures against the white landscape, moving with purpose toward an opening in the mountainside. "The exiles," Lyra growled, her fur bristling. "They have found the sacred path." Using their tactical scopes, they observed the group. Approximately 20 Christosians unlike any Marcus had seen before. Their natural fur was interspersed with cybernetic implants, their bodies modified with what appeared to be crystalline technology. Leading them was a figure whose fur was almost entirely replaced with metallic and crystal components, a grotesque merger of Christosian biology and forbidden technology. "Varix," Lyra hissed, leader of the exiles. Once he was a respected elder of the mountain tribe before his obsession with crystal technology led to his banishment. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and beside him, Marcus adjusted his scope. Walking confidently alongside the cyborg Christosian was the unmistakable figure of Commander Thorn, accompanied by a squad of Terran soldiers wearing specialized insignia Marcus didn't recognize, not standard Imperial forces. Private contractors, Rostova surmised. "Mercenaries. Thorn's building his own personal army. We're outnumbered." Marcus stated the obvious. "We need a plan." Lyra's eyes never left the distant figures. "They will need time to navigate this sacred labyrinth. It was designed to confuse those without proper guidance. I know the true path." She turned to Marcus, her expression resolute. "We can use the Hunter's Passage, a hidden entrance known only to Ice Wolf trackers. It will bring us to the Heart Chamber before they navigate the main pathways. And once we're there," Rostova asked practically, "what's to stop them from taking whatever this Frost Heart is once they arrive?" "The Heart Chamber has defenses," Lyra explained. "Ancient mechanisms that respond to Ice Wolf blood and ritual. If I can initiate the Guardian protocols, it will seal the chamber against intruders." Marcus nodded, making his decision. "Lead the way." They circled wide around the main entrance, using ice formations for cover as they approached the mountains from the eastern face. Twice they were forced to lie motionless in the snow as exile scouts passed nearby. Lyra's white-silver fur provided natural camouflage, while Marcus and Rostova relied on their thermal dampening gear to avoid detection. The Hunter's Passage proved to be little more than a narrow crevice in the mountainside, barely visible unless one knew exactly where to look. Lyra slipped inside with fluid grace. Marcus and Rostova followed with considerably more difficulty, their bulky human forms and equipment scraping against the crystal-embedded ice walls. Inside, the passage descended steeply into the mountain's heart. Unlike the sterile whiteness of Christos' surface, the interior glowed with an otherworldly blue light emanating from crystal veins that ran through the ice like luminous blood vessels. The air was noticeably warmer, not comfortable by human standards, but above freezing, which seemed impossible given the external temperatures. "The Frost Heart's presence warms the sacred caves," Lyra explained, seeing their wonder. "It is said that before the great slumber, all of Christos was temperate, with flowing waters and abundant life." "What happened?" Marcus asked, ducking beneath a low-hanging crystal formation. "The ancient texts speak of a cataclysm, a great betrayal that wounded the heart. It withdrew its warmth and pain, and Christos became the frozen world you know today." Lyra's voice carried the weight of generations of oral tradition. The ice wolves sworn to protect it, to ensure it would never be wounded again. As they ventured deeper, the passage opened into a vast underground network of chambers and tunnels, each more beautiful and strange than the last. Crystal formations of impossible complexity lined the walls, ceiling, and floor, creating natural architecture that put the finest Terran designs to shame. In some places, the crystals formed perfect geometric patterns. In others, they flowed like frozen waterfalls. These weren't formed naturally, Rostova observed, her scientific mind engaging despite their dire situation. No, Lyra agreed. These are the dreams of the frost heart, taking physical form over millennia of slumber. They moved as quickly as safety allowed, Lyra guiding them through a labyrinthine network where choosing the wrong path could lead to dead ends, hidden pitfalls, or worse. Several times they heard distant echoes of the exile party navigating the main chambers. Voices, both Christosian and human, occasionally punctuated by the sounds of crystal being forcibly removed or destroyed. They desecrate the sacred path, Lyra growled, her fur bristling. The heart will sense their violation. As if in response to her words, a low vibration began to permeate the caves, a resonance that seemed to emanate from the crystal veins themselves. The blue glow intensified, pulsing like a heartbeat. "It's waking," Lyra whispered, a mixture of awe and concern in her voice. "We must hurry." The vibrations grew stronger as they descended deeper, making it difficult to maintain footing on the increasingly slick crystal floors. The temperature continued to rise, creating a strange mist where warm air met cold crystal surfaces. "How close are we?" Marcus asked, his voice hushed in the resonating space. "Very," Lyra replied, pausing at a junction where three identical passages diverged. She knelt, placing her palm against a seemingly unremarkable patch of floor. A symbol etched in the ice began to glow in response to her touch. This way, the passage she chose narrowed dramatically before suddenly opening into a breathtaking chamber that made all the previous wonders pale in comparison. A perfect dome of crystal arched overhead, so transparent it appeared they stood beneath the open Christosian sky, the twin moons visible through the mountain itself. The floor was a mirror-smooth plain of ice, at the center of which stood a raised dais of interlocking crystal formations. And on that dais, suspended in midair, rotated a crystalline structure unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, a complex, ever-shifting geometric form that seemed simultaneously solid and liquid, transparent yet iridescent with every color imaginable. It pulsed with an inner light that synchronized with the vibrations now resonating throughout the entire cave system. "The Frost Heart," Lyra breathed, her voice thick with emotion. Even Rostova, normally stoic and analytical, stood, transfixed. "It's incredible." Marcus found himself speechless. The floating crystal formation radiated not just light and heat, but a palpable sense of consciousness, of ancient, patient awareness slowly rousing from deep slumber. Standing before it, he felt both insignificant and connected to something vast beyond comprehension. "What now?" he managed finally, tearing his gaze away to look at Lyra. Before she could answer, a slow hand clap echoed through the chamber. "Yes, what now indeed?" Commander Thorne's voice dripped with satisfaction as he stepped from a side passage, flanked by 4 armed mercenaries. "I must thank you for leading us straight to the prize, Captain. Navigating these caves has proven challenging." Marcus, Rostova, and Lyra spun to face the newcomers, weapons raised in an instant. "How did you find us?" Marcus demanded. Thorne smiled coldly. "Did you really think I wouldn't have tracking devices implanted in my officers' standard issue gear? Particularly officers with a history of excessive empathy." His gaze shifted to Lyra with undisguised greed. "And here we are at last. The fabled Frost Heart. Worth far more than the entire crystal mining operation, I'd wager. You have no idea what you're dealing with," Marcus warned, positioning himself protectively beside Lyra. "On the contrary," Thorne replied, "I've spent years researching this entity while you and your kind blindly followed orders to mine its tears. The power to control an entire planet's climate, to harness energy on a scale beyond our current technology. The imperial market value is incalculable. His smile widened. And that's before we consider the military applications. From another passage emerged the cybernetically enhanced Christosian leader, Varix, accompanied by more of his exile followers. Where Lyra's form was natural and graceful, Varix's was a disturbing hybrid of organic and artificial. His silver fur interspersed with metallic plates, one eye replaced with a crystal lens that glowed with the same blue energy as the heart itself. The humans speak of markets and weapons, Varix said, his voice carrying an artificial resonance. We seek transcendence. The Frost Heart's energy will complete our evolution beyond flesh. Lyra snarled, a sound of pure contempt. You betray everything our people stand for, exile. The heart is not yours to claim or control. Your tribe had generations to utilize its power and chose to worship it instead, Varix replied dismissively. Your failure ends today. The tension in the chamber was palpable, with all parties focused on the pulsating crystal entity at its center. The vibrations had intensified to the point where small shards of ice were falling from the domed ceiling. It responds to our presence, Thorn observed. Varix, begin the extraction process. The cyborg Christosian produced a device from within his modified body, a contraption of metal and crystal components that hummed with energy. The containment field will stabilize it for transport. Once removed from this chamber, its resistance will fade. No, Lyra lunged forward, only to be restrained by two mercenaries who had circled behind them during the exchange. Marcus and Rostova found themselves similarly surrounded, their weapons rendered useless by the risk of ricochets in the crystal chamber. You can't remove it from the mountain, Lyra warned desperately. The Frost Heart is connected to Christos itself. Severing that connection could destabilize the entire planet. Thorn shrugged. A risk I'm willing to take. After all, this ice ball has little value beyond its crystals. As Varix approached the dais with his containment device, the Frost Heart's pulsations became erratic. The blue glow intensified dramatically, casting harsh shadows across the chamber. The temperature rose sharply, causing the surface ice to begin melting beneath their feet. It's trying to defend itself, Rostova observed, struggling against her captor. Lyra's eyes never left the heart, her expression one of desperate calculation. When she spoke, it was in a low voice meant only for Marcus beside her. There is one way to stop them. The blood bond ritual. It would connect me to the heart, allow me to awaken it properly rather than let them force it. Her eyes met his. But the ritual requires sacrifice. It may unmake me. Marcus felt a cold that had nothing to do with Christos seize his heart. There has to be another way. There isn't, Lyra whispered. But I need a distraction. When I give the signal, be ready to take cover. Before Marcus could protest further, Varix activated his device. A beam of concentrated energy shot toward the Frost Heart, attempting to encase it in a containment field. The heart responded violently, its geometric form spinning rapidly, emitting pulses of blue energy that shattered nearby crystal formations. The cave trembled, and a deep rumbling echoed through the mountain. Cracks appeared in the ice floor, releasing plumes of steam. Something's wrong, one of the mercenaries shouted over the growing chaos. Stabilize it, Thorn commanded Varix, his composure slipping for the first time. The cyborg Christosian adjusted his device, increasing its power. The consciousness resists. It must be subdued. In the confusion, Lyra caught Marcus's eye and nodded almost imperceptibly. Now, she mouthed. Acting on instinct, Marcus drove his elbow into his captor's stomach, breaking free as Rostova simultaneously executed a flawless combat maneuver that sent her guards sprawling across the ice. Marcus tackled Lyra's guards, creating an opening for her to sprint toward the dais. Stop her, Thorn bellowed, drawing his sidearm. Marcus and Rostova provided covering fire, forcing Thorn and his mercenaries to seek shelter behind crystal columns. But Varix was too close to the heart to intervene against, his containment beam still locked onto the pulsating entity. Lyra reached the dais, dodging energy blasts from the exiles. With a fluid motion that spoke of ancient ritual performed countless times in preparation, she drew a ceremonial dagger from her boot, a crystal blade that glowed with the same blue energy as the heart. "By blood and bond, I call to thee," she intoned in the Christosian language, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Frostheart of Christos, awaken to my plea." She plunged the dagger into her palm, then pressed her bleeding hand against the nearest crystal formation connected to the dais. Her blood, a striking blue against the white ice, seemed to be absorbed instantly into the crystal, creating veins of glowing azure that spread throughout the dais structure. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The frost heart's erratic movements suddenly ceased, the geometric form stabilizing into a perfect, complex polyhedron. Its blue glow intensified to blinding levels, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. Varix's containment beam dissipated harmlessly against it, the device overloading in his hands with a shower of sparks. "What is she doing?" Thorn shouted, his voice barely audible over the resonant hum that now filled the chamber. Lyra stood transfixed, her hands still pressed against the crystal, her body rigid as the glowing veins of energy spread up her arm and across her torso. Her eyes, when she opened them, were luminous pools of the same blue energy that emanated from the heart. "She's communing with it," Marcus realized aloud, watching in awe and terror. Becoming its vessel. The temperature in the chamber soared, the ice floor melting into pools of water that reflected the increasingly intense light from above. The crystal walls began to sing, a harmonic resonance that vibrated at a frequency that made Thorn's mercenaries drop their weapons to cover their ears in pain. Varix stared at the phenomenon with a mixture of rage and covetousness. "The power should be mine," he snarled, lunging toward Lyra, with cybernetic enhancements propelling him forward at inhuman speed. Marcus intercepted in midair, both of them crashing to the floor in a tangle of limbs. Despite his training, Marcus found himself outmatched by the cyborg's augmented strength. Varix pinned him to the ground, a retractable blade emerging from his mechanical forearm. "Your interference ends now, human," Varix growled, raising the blade. A plasma bolt struck Varix's shoulder, throwing off his aim. Rostova stood with her weapon trained on the cyborg, firing again as he turned his attention to her. The distraction gave Marcus enough time to break free, rolling away just as Varix's blade embedded itself in the spot where his head had been moments before. Across the chamber, Thorn had recovered his composure enough to recognize a losing situation. "Fall back," he ordered his mercenaries. "Secure the exit tunnels." But retreat had become impossible. The passages they had entered through were now sealed by rapidly growing crystal formations that spread like living things, blocking all exits. The chamber had become a sealed environment, with the Frost Heart at its center and Lyra as its conduit. When Lyra spoke again, her voice was layered with another presence, ancient, powerful, and distinctly non-human. "This violation ends today," she said, the words resonating physically in the chamber. "The cycle of exploitation is broken." The Frost Heart expanded, its geometric form growing until it surrounded Lyra completely in a cocoon of living crystal. From this cocoon, tendrils of blue energy reached out across the chamber, seeking those present with purposeful intelligence. One such tendril touched Marcus gently, and in an instant, he understood, not through words but through direct knowledge transferred to his consciousness. The Frost Heart was indeed an ancient consciousness, a guardian of Christos that had retreated into dormancy after humans had first discovered the planet centuries ago and begun to exploit its resources. It had created the Ice Age conditions as a defense mechanism, hoping to discourage colonization. The Ice Wolves had formed a pact with it, agreeing to serve as its protectors while it slept. In return, they had evolved to thrive in the frozen world it had created. Now, Faced with the dual threats of human resource extraction and the abomination of the exile's crystal technology, it had awakened fully, using Lyra's willing sacrifice as its anchor to physical reality. When the tendril withdrew, Marcus gasped, overwhelmed by the communion. He looked to Rostova and saw from her expression that she had experienced something similar. Thorn and his mercenaries were not so fortunate. The tendrils that reached for them were not gentle, but constraining, wrapping around them with inexorable force. "What is this?" Thorn shouted, struggling against the glowing bonds. "Release me immediately." Varix and his exiles faced an even more terrible judgment. The blue energy engulfed them completely, interfacing directly with their cybernetic implants. The crystal components in their modified bodies began to glow from within, then to disintegrate, returning to pure energy that the Frost Heart reclaimed as its own. Their screams echoed briefly before being swallowed by the overwhelming harmonic resonance. The cocoon surrounding Lyra pulsed one final time before shattering into countless motes of light that dispersed throughout the chamber. Where Lyra had stood, a transformed being now emerged, still recognizably her, yet altered. Her white-silver fur now contained veins of luminescent crystal that pulsed with each heartbeat. Her eyes, once ice blue, now contained the swirling complexity of the Frost Heart itself. "Lyra," Marcus approached cautiously, uncertain if his ally, his friend, still existed within the transformed being before him. Her smile was weary but genuine. "I remain Marcus Vance." Her voice was her own again, though with a subtle resonance that suggested she was not alone in her consciousness. "Though I'm also more than I was." "What happens now?" Rostova asked, helping Marcus to his feet. Lyra, or the entity she had become, gestured, and the restraints holding Thorn and his surviving mercenaries dissolved. "You will stand trial for your crimes," she said to the commander, "both before your empire and before the peoples of Christos." Thorn's face contorted with hatred. "This planet is imperial territory. You have no authority." "Christos is alive," Lyra interrupted, "and has chosen to awaken. Your empire now faces a choice: peaceful coexistence or departure." She turned to Marcus and Rostova. "Your evidence of corruption will ensure fair consideration of our position." The chamber began to shift around them, the ice melting away completely to reveal a structure of pure crystal beneath. Not natural formations, but an ancient architecture of breathtaking complexity that had been hidden beneath the ice for centuries. "This was a truth beneath the ice all along," Lyra explained. "The original Christos, a world of crystal and flowing water, of life and balance. It could be this way again." As if in response to her words, a wave of energy pulsed outward from the chamber, through the mountain, across the frozen plains beyond. Marcus could almost sense it spreading across the entire planet, a gradual but inevitable thawing. "The change will be controlled, not sudden," Lyra assured them, sensing their concern. "Generations will pass before Christos returns to its original state. Time enough for all who dwell here to adapt or depart peacefully." Rostova's communicator suddenly activated, a signal breaking through where none had been possible before. "Imperial Command to Lieutenant Rostova," came a formal voice. "Your transmission received. Corruption investigation initiated. Request status update." The events that followed unfolded with a surreal efficiency. Imperial reinforcements arrived, but not as conquerors, as investigators. Commander Thorn and his surviving conspirators were taken into custody. The exiles, those who had survived the Frost Heart's judgment, were detained by their Christosian kin for their own form of justice. And through it all, Marcus remained by Lyra's side as she emerged as something unprecedented, a bridge between worlds, between species, between the consciousness of a planet and the beings that dwelled upon it. 1 week after what was already being called the Awakening, Marcus found himself standing with Lyra on a balcony overlooking the transformed crystal sentinels. Where once there had been only barren peaks of ice, Now crystal spires housed a growing settlement of both Christosians and humans, the beginning of a true cooperative presence. The Imperial delegation arrives tomorrow, Marcus noted, watching the first green plants beginning to emerge in the valley below. Species long dormant, preserving the ice, now reawakening as the climate gradually warmed. They'll want to negotiate. New terms. Lyra nodded, the crystal veins in her fur catching the light of the setting suns. We are prepared. The heart sees much, including the genuine shock among your leaders when they learn the truth about Christos. There's potential for a new beginning. And us? Marcus asked, voicing the question that had lingered between them since her transformation. What happens to us in this new beginning? Lyra turned to him, studying his face with eyes that held both ancient wisdom and personal warmth. Do you remember my words when we first met? When you held my life in your hands? Don't kill me, human. I'll warm your bed, Marcus quoted softly. I didn't understand what you were offering then. A life bond, Lyra said. A sacred connection between warriors who have seen each other's true nature in battle. It was a desperate plea then, born of ancient ritual and survival instinct. She moved closer, her transformed presence radiating a gentle warmth that belied the frigid air around them. Now, I would offer it again, but freely chosen, not as captive to captor, but as equal to equal. Marcus felt his heart race, remembering the strange pull he had felt toward her from that first moment, a connection that had grown through shared danger and purpose into something profound. I'm still human, and you're something more than Christosian now. Is such a bond even possible? Lyra smiled, the expression transforming her alien features into something achingly beautiful. The heart exists in all things, Marcus Vance. In the crystals, in the ice, in the blood of every living creature on Christos, even in you, though you are not born here. It is connection itself. She held out her hand, and within her palm floated a small crystal that pulsed with a now familiar blue light. This is for you, a piece of the heart, freely given, a symbol and a tool. With it, you'll never truly be separate from Christos, or from me. Marcus accepted the crystal, feeling it warm to his touch, sensing a faint resonance with something deep within himself that he had never known was there. What does it mean, exactly, to warm someone's bed in Christosian tradition? He asked with a half-smile. Lyra's eyes sparkled with both ancient wisdom and very personal amusement. It means to share one's warmth in all ways, body, mind, spirit. To be a companion through the coldest nights. To create heat where there was none. Her voice softened. Would you allow me to show you, Marcus Vance? As the twin moons rose over a world in transformation, as ice began its long, slow retreat before new life, Marcus made one more decision that defied everything his training had taught him. It embraced everything his heart had learned. Yes, he said simply, taking her hand in his. I would like that very much. And in the growing twilight, the frost heart of Christos pulsed with approval as two beings from different worlds forged a bond that symbolized everything its awakening had made possible. Understanding where there had been suspicion, warmth where there had been cold, and love where there had been war. On a planet of ice and crystal, the most precious resource had turned out to be something no empire could mine or exploit. The capacity for connection across seemingly insurmountable differences and the courage to choose a different path when truth is finally revealed.